When we talk about all of this industrial growth and big business, it's really important to have a fairly good understanding of the economics of all of this. So we're going to have to look at how all of these businesses are working, how they're making money, and who exactly is sort of pulling all of these strings. So all of this is really founded on the corporation. So it's important to know what a corporation is. A corporation is when a number of people share ownership of a business. So multiple people have invested money into a business to kickstart it, and they might not all necessarily own the same percentage in the company, but they all do own pieces of the company. So for the first time, people have the opportunity to buy goods from businesses far away thanks to the development of the railway system, and this attracts more investments, more investors, more business opportunities in general. So that's really why the corporation is going to become so successful during the Gilded Age. In a corporation, if a business goes under, the investor, the owner, only loses exactly what they put into it. So if you only have $10,000 to invest in a business, you can invest that into a corporation. And if something happens in the corporation, fails and goes under, you only lost $10,000. That's very different from privately owning a business, being the sole owner of a business. If it goes under, you're responsible for all the debt of that business. This is really great for expanding business because you always know exactly what your risk is. You always know exactly what you're getting yourself into. It's a lot more secure. Corporations have similar rights as individuals. Corporations can buy and sell property. So if you formed a corporation and you needed to buy a building to house your factory, it would not be in your name or anyone else's name that owns the business. It would be under the actual business's name. The land deed would have their name on it. At the same time, a corporation can sue in court. A corporation can be sued in court, which really protects the business owners, because if something bad was to happen and your business was to get sued, your name is not on the lawsuit. So your private things that you own, your car, your home, any other properties, those things are not at risk of being taken from you regardless of the judgment of the case. The actual corporation's name would be what is listed on the suit. So only the assets that the corporation owns could be sort of up for grabs if you were to lose the case. If you want out, if you're a partial owner of a corporation and you want out, the other investors can just split what you put in and they can buy you out, easy peasy. And because it's made up of money for multiple investors instead of just one, there is more capital. There's more business or more money, that the business can use to invest into the business or into other things, whether that's expanding your business, investing into people, lots of different things that you can do when there is just more money floating around. So most corporations are going to do their best to cut costs by spending as little as possible on supplies and by paying their employees very low wages. So a lot of them, when they increase their profit margin, like I've said, you can use that money, invest it back into your business, invest it into other things. A lot of them will sponsor inventors, like we've already talked about. JP Morgan sponsored Thomas Edison, things like that. So in terms of cutting costs, we're going to talk about 4 major business tycoons and how exactly they cut costs. The first here is Cornelius Vanderbilt. His name should sound familiar, like Vanderbilt University. He did sponsor that school and built Morehouse, right? That's his family. So Vanderbilt was the owner of a steamboat service. Eventually he gets into railroads, but he starts out in steamboats. And what he would do is he would go into a place where there are already a lot of that one business. So let's say steamboats. He would go into a place where there were already plenty of steamboat companies, and he would undercut their prices by a lot. That would make him lose money, but it would attract all the business to him. So after he sort of stole all the customers away from these other businesses, he would tell them that he would leave if they paid them. So he would get his competitors to pay him to relocate, to save their own businesses. Totally legal, very shady, but totally legal. Some corporations even actively try to become a monopoly. A monopoly is when you control completely a good or service. You're the only provider for that good or service. This allows the company to set their own prices, which can be very dangerous. They can jack prices way up. Cartels are also a good way to sort of get around monopoly laws. I know when you hear the word cartel, you think of the drug cartel, and that's not what I'm talking about. A cartel is businesses coming together who all sort of sell or provide the same good or service. They all make the same product, and they agree to limit their production of that product in an effort to keep prices high. So when there's not as many of something, it's less available. The price of it is higher because it's sort of rare. So that's what a cartel is. J.D. Rockefeller, who we see over here on the far right, he was the owner and founder of a massive railroad company, and oil company called Standard Oil, and he would make deals with railroad companies in order to lower his own costs. So he was paying less than all of his competitors to transport his supplies and his product to other people. Vertical and horizontal integration are also really smart ways that we see people cut costs. Rockefeller created horizontal integration. So horizontal means left to right, right? So horizontal integration is consolidating many firms to create one giant company. So you're sort of consolidating multiple businesses that do the same thing, provide the same good or service, to essentially create a monopoly. Rockefeller's the first person to do this. A lot of states at the time had laws against monopolies, so Rockefeller worked to find a way around it. For example, Ohio tried to block horizontal integration by saying that one company could not own stock in a competitor. So, for example, Verizon couldn't buy stock in Sprint because then Verizon would have a say in what's happening at Sprint, and they'd be making money off of it, off of their own competitor. So, to get around this, Rockefeller instead creates a trust. A trust is when companies assign their stock to a board of trustees who then combine them into a new organization. And then they can use that money to invest in other things. And the trustees run the trust by paying themselves off of the profits. So sort of another shady way of getting around it, but totally legal. Vertical integration was started by Andrew Carnegie, who you see pictured right there. Andrew Carnegie was a steel tycoon. He owned U.S. Steel, and he was an immigrant to the United States from Scotland. He came with not very much money at all. Worked hard, worked his way up, and became really, essentially in today's dollars, a billionaire. So Carnegie gained control of all the businesses that made up steel development. That's what vertical integration, up and down. He's bought all of his suppliers, essentially. So an example of this would be like if you own a car company, like if you owned Ford and you wanted to buy out your suppliers, you could buy a glass company and a rubber company and a steel company and a textile mill and all these things that supply you with the materials that you need to create a car. So now your costs are lower because your suppliers aren't making money off of you because your suppliers are you. And at the same time, you can sell supplies to your competitors and jack the prices way up to them. So it reduces your costs and allows you to charge higher prices to other people, making even more money off of it. So all around a pretty smart thing. Now, all of the stuff that I've said is totally legal, but the question is really, is it ethical? A lot of people have very different opinions on these four guys. So here they are, J.D. Rockefeller, Cornelius Vanderbilt, Andrew Carnegie, and J.P. Morgan. We've talked about already. J.P. Morgan, remember, he was a banker, and he founds the investment and bank group JP Morgan, which is still around today. So lots of small businesses are getting swallowed up by big businesses at this time. Customers are starting to see their prices increase, and a lot of these business tycoons start being known as robber barons because they feel like people feel like they've made their money off of other people by squashing the little man. Others feel like these guys are helping fuel the economy. They're creating businesses, they're creating jobs, they're doing a good thing, and they call them captains of industry. A lot of them are also known for their charity, like Andrew Carnegie. Later in his life, he's going to donate almost 90% of his entire net worth to different charities. They donate to museums and libraries and schools, and like Carnegie Music Hall and Vanderbilt University, lots of different facilities like this. Now, all of this we can relate back to this new idea. The idea of those guys being captains of industry is really supported by this new theory floating around the United States at this time called social Darwinism. Now, hopefully we all know what Darwinism is, the theory of evolution based off of the ideas of Charles Darwin. Social Darwinism is pretty much invented by this guy named Charles Sumner, not the Charles Sumner you're thinking of. This is a new Charles Sumner, so we can use his middle name to help keep it straight. Charles Graham Sumner. So Charles Graham Sumner was a professor at Yale, and he read Charles Darwin's theory of evolution and genetics and survival of the fittest, and he expanded on that in his own writings. And he basically wrote that the fittest people would become the wealthiest, and other people who are unfit, they would become poor and they would die out. So if we're looking at these four guys and we're saying, hey, Vanderbilt is only wealthy because he has, screwed over all these other people, Charles Graham Sumner would argue, no, he has made it to the top because he's just better. He is the best of the best. He's the smartest. He has the most willing to take risks. He has what it takes. He's a good negotiator, good communicator. He has what it takes to make it to the top in business. So people said that there should be no government regulation, or else it would disrupt all of this natural selection. No matter how much the government intervenes, it won't stop these guys from making it to the top. So we shouldn't try. We shouldn't try to slow that process down. We should let nature take its course. Some people also argued that it's morally wrong to use taxpayer money to help the poor, because the poor are sort of socially unfit. They're at the bottom of that economic and social gene pool. So we should just allow them to stay at the bottom. And obviously that, if you sort of connect all the dots, that in a way provides an explanation and justification crazily to racism, because obviously minorities are at the bottom of that economic pool, of that economic ladder, as are women. And so they can say, obviously minorities suck because they're poor, and that's evidence. This is proof that African Americans might not be as, I guess, intelligent and capable as white people, because here they are at the bottom of this economic ladder, and that's all social Darwinism. Women, not as strong and intelligent as men. Here they are at the bottom of the economic ladder. So it's sort of a justification for a bunch of BS, if you just ask me. So as this continues, we've got to say, at a certain point, do we want the government to step in? And we're practicing laissez-faire economics, which means hands off. We're allowing business to just happen how it will, and the government isn't getting involved. But like I've said, if you just let that run rampant, we can get into a lot of corruption and see a lot of problems come. So finally, the government is going to try to step in here and get involved. So in 1887, the government creates the ICC, the Interstate Commerce Commission, which was originally designed to oversee railroad companies. It's the first federal body made to oversee businesses, which is really important. Now, they don't really do much when they're first made because they don't have any laws to say that anyone's breaking. So we've got to create laws. So in 1890, we passed the Sherman Antitrust Act, which outlaws trusts that hurt the economy. Not all trusts, just bad ones. So this is very rarely used because companies find ways around it. And they even turn it around on the worker and say that labor unions are like trusts that hurt the economy. So in some cases, we're even going to see labor unions broken up by the Sherman Antitrust Act, which is really the opposite of what it was meant to do.